it's pretty fair that you're going to get tapped out now and then. And you should get used to that. Don't build your whole persona around, I'm the guy who never taps. That's not safe. And it's not good for anyone in the training room. Other people look at that and they're like, well, now I want to be the guy that never gets tapped out.
What's the most efficient path to victory against this particular opponent?
He's dropping off for the choke here. We could see the finish. It's looking tight. Tight as Alpra.
Hey guys, welcome to the Essential Jiu Jitsu podcast. I'm your host, Matt Kwan. The Essential Jiu Jitsu podcast is everything you need to know about Jiu Jitsu. And we're back. We're going to be talking about training safely. How can we go through this journey of BJJ where we're going to the gym every single day, putting in lots of hours, putting miles on our bodies, and training each other basically to kill each other, breaking each other's arms, strangling. How can we do this on a daily basis safely and realistically? But before we do that, please like, share, subscribe. You know what to do. Leave comments in the comment section. Share the show with your friends. If you want to support or contact the show, check out the links in the bottom. Also, you'll be also noticing that my voice is gone, and that is because we had ADCC Vancouver on the weekend. I lost my voice by like 10 or 11 a.m. from screaming at children. Kids team did awesome. It was so great seeing them compete, especially under that rule set. They have been used to this rule set. I should be more specific. Rules such as using head and arms, katagatames, guillotines, things like that, and dealing with the specifics of ADCC rule set. They've been playing with these different submissions because Grappling Industries has been coming to Vancouver and things like that, but also just a completely different rule set that has been a challenge, but really, really fun to introduce to the kids. And I think we're going to see more of it because ADCC is bringing opens to many, many cities, and front headlocks are great for kids. I really like the rule set. I think it's more of a true expression of grappling when compared to IBJJF. Of course, IBJJF, you can't do things like katagatames, guillotines, pulling the head down in the triangle. I just think it's more realistic. And really, if you think about it, guillotines aren't that dangerous for kids, okay? I think it's kind of a myth that kids could hurt their spines getting caught in guillotines, all right? I'd just like to touch on my ADCC experience before we go into training BJJ safely. So, great tournament. I did the rules meeting the day before, and then of course we can weigh in the day before, which I really like, something IBJJF doesn't have, and you can weigh in without the gi, which is something IBJJF also doesn't have. IBJJF, you weigh in right before the tournament, or right before you compete, I should say. And so I do the rules meeting, and it was great at the Richmond Olympic Oval, which is our stadium in Richmond that was built for the Olympics. It's a great facility. And then after I go in the lineup, I'm waiting to weigh in, and I get to the scale and I hop on and I'm like 2 pounds over. And I'm like, holy shit. Like I did a salt bath and everything. I cut weight and I was on weight when I left. It's about an hour drive to the venue. And then I sat through a rules meeting for an hour and a half. And so I thought, okay, if I didn't drink any water, how could I be over? Hop on the first scale, like 2 pounds over. I'm like, no fucking way. Hop on the second scale, 1.5 pounds over. So there's a half pound difference. I look over there and there's like 40 people in the lineup still. And once they go through, the weigh-ins close. So I'm like, shit, I just start doing jumping jacks, burpees. I start sprinting back and forth. I start spitting in the garbage can, which is actually a great way to lose like 1 pound if you need to in a pinch. Spit. I couldn't go pee because I already went. I had barely any saliva, but once I started doing burpees, my mouth started watering and I was able to summon up saliva. And then I was able to cut the 1.5 pounds just in time. I was the last person to weigh in and I did it. And that was stressful, but I have been in a similar situation like that before. And, if you can anticipate things like this, it's actually not that bad. Okay. Cutting 1.5 pounds, even just doing burpees and running around and spitting in a cup or in a garbage can, it's actually pretty doable. Okay. And I kind of anticipated that. There's no fucking way I wanted to weigh in the next morning. Okay. So made the weight and then came back the next day. Kids did awesome. Our kids team and our adult team won second overall. out of all the teams for ADCC, and that's a really great accomplishment. My professor, Rob, actually won top adult team, I believe. So hats off to you, Rob. I'll get you next time. And I had 7 matches. I won 6 out of the 7. I lost in the semifinals to my friend and foe, Lucas Wilhan from Lapel Arts, incredible grappler. We had a wrestling exchange. I believe he shot in, and he managed to duck out on my sprawl, came up to my back, and I hesitated for just a second. I should have Granby'd through, and this was about a minute left in overtime. I hesitated for a second. He was able to throw the hooks in and took my back and scored his points. Pretty disappointing on my end. I dominated pretty much every other match except for the bronze medal match, which was after that. I still won. I mounted the guy, took his back, but I didn't dominate him. He was quite good. Can't remember his name. A pretty savvy leg locker. And I was able to play my top game pressure. I felt so good out there. It was just unfortunate that I was able to lose to a guy like Lucas, but there is no shame in losing to a guy like that at the highest levels. It's just one mistake is all it takes, and lots to take away from it. I'm signed up to do ADCC East Coast Trials. That's in Atlantic City, and that's going to be in October. Plus, I'm fighting Lucas the week before in a city close to Vancouver in the interior of BC called Penticton. We're going to do a super fight. It's going to be sub only. So again, I think the record between me and him now, he's got 3 victories and I have 2 over him. He's a funny guy. He's a guy that I respect a lot. And he always brings out the best in me, and we compete with each other a lot. And thank you, Lucas, for the hard match. And, it was a great tournament experience. Couple takeaways from the tournament experience. One thing I love about ADCC is you can discuss with the table calls that you don't like, and they actually listen, okay? In an IBJJF situation, you try and tell the referee or the table something that you feel didn't go your way, you basically get DQ'd, okay? Or you get kicked out, you get ejected from mat side. In ADCC, they literally will stop what they're doing and actually consider what you're saying, and they have every intention of trying to find some kind of justice in the situation, okay? So, for example, one of my students actually was fighting. I didn't get a chance to corner him because I was on the other side of the arena doing my own matches, but he went out of bounds, and for some reason there was a scramble, and he didn't get scored on, but they scored points against him. They ended up giving the other guy the win because he won in regulation because of these bogus points that he shouldn't have gotten. My student was all pissed off, and we didn't have a proper corner for him who was protesting the call or anything like that. And anyways, they went up to the organizer after, and the organizer said, "Oh yeah, that's the truth. Actually, that was a bad call." Asked the other guy who beat my student, "Do you want to do a rematch?" And the guy said no, because he was getting ready to go to the finals. So you can't, at first I was like, well, I wouldn't really want to win like that. But at the same time, it kind of makes sense because this person has now been waiting around for like 20 minutes, 30 minutes, getting ready to do the finals. And then the organizer comes up and says, "Hey, remember that victory we gave you? Yeah, you shouldn't have won that. So do you want to do the match again?" It's like, maybe I wouldn't take that match again. But anyways, ADCC Canada rectified the situation by refunding my students money. You'll never see IBJJF do something like that. You won't even see IBJJF admit when they do something wrong. They'll just DQ you if you do something they don't like. A phantom reap, a collar tie that's too hard, anything. And IBJJF is just going to DQ you. They don't care if you spend thousands of dollars to travel abroad and go do one of their tournaments. They just DQ you, right? Whereas ADCC, you say something, they stop what they're doing, and they check and try and see if they can make things right. Another thing happened. One of the kids got scored on, and he shouldn't have gotten scored on because he had a front headlock, or he had a guillotine locked in from side control. And then they reset in the middle and they awarded the other kid points. Time's running down. I'm like, why do you get points? There's a headlock on, right? I keep asking. The time runs out. And so I just stand up and I go to the judge's table right there. I'm like, listen, there was a headlock on. And he says, okay, hold on. They talk to the referee and the 2 judges start talking. And they came to the conclusion that, yeah, those were bogus points. So they push it to overtime. They just change their decision, just randomly, because I protested. And I'm like, man, that's so awesome. Like, it's almost like I have a challenge card and I can play it and they actually listen, because they're not so proud that they can't make a change in their judgment, which is super awesome. Okay. And so I really appreciate ADCC did that. And of course, my student, he's like a wizard. He wins by a ninja choke in the overtime round. It was really spectacular. Okay. I saw crazy shit too. Another thing that they were talking about the rules meeting is how they don't want to DQ anyone. Whereas IBJJF will just DQ you if you literally collar tie someone too hard. Like there was a beginner's match and the guy was on the guy's back. He didn't even have a strangle locked in. Guy stands up, fully drops back, just like what's his name? Rico Rodriguez versus Marcelo Garcia back in the day, just full on, boom, drops him backwards, lands on him. I'm like, this is not my student, by the way. I'm just watching and enjoying it. And I'm like, this is a beginner's match. Beginners are not allowed to slam out of submissions. This is a beginner's match. The table's paying no attention to me. I'm like, okay, that shouldn't have happened. Then the guy stands up again. The guy's on his back. I'm like, oh my God, he's going to do it again. This is a beginner's match. And the guy just drops right back. Not even a strangle locked in. The only way you're supposed to slam is if a fully locked submission is in. So a fully locked armbar, a fully locked triangle, not a trap triangle, a fully locked rear naked choke, not one arm under the chin. And this guy just drops back and slams this guy. I'm like, this is a beginner's match, you know? And then they finally stop the match and they go talk to the head referee. The referee's like, oh yeah, that shouldn't happen. And I'm like, okay, so surely this will be a DQ, right? And like they just let the match continue. I'm like, this is crazy. This is like the Wild West out here. You know, they don't want to DQ you. And in a way, I fucking love that. I think that's great. You got kids jumping guard. No DQ. Just reset standing. No, we don't want to DQ. You got kids reaping, fully reap. Oh, just stop, reset, go. Like, and you know what? In a way, I think that's kind of how it should be. Okay. I think ADCC, they have a lot of work to do in terms of educating their judges and their referees, because a lot of people, and myself included, were a little hazy on some of the fine parts of the rules, but that's kind of what you have to do. You have to go to these different cities and you have to build a culture where the sport of ADCC, because it is its own sport, it's its own specialized type of grappling, needs to be the education of the sport needs to be distributed to the public. And the only way to do that is to get these tournaments out and get people volunteering to be referees and judges. It wasn't like they were bringing ADCC judges in. A lot of these judges were people I knew from Vancouver who didn't really understand the rules. And so, you know, you're going to have situations like that where people don't know what is legal and what isn't. They're used to the IBJJF rule set, I would say. And we're going to see more ADCCs. We're going to see more people understand the rules, and these rules become more well-known and well accepted. The last thing I'll mention that was very interesting that they talked about in the rules meeting was the initiation invisible advantages. So there is no advantages in ADCC. However, I didn't know this, but if you are initiating action, the judges at the judges table will give you a little notch next to your name, and that signifies that you are initiating the action. Okay, so let's say I shoot in on someone and off of my shot, they lock in a guillotine and we go to the floor, there's a scramble, the guillotine's tight, I get out, we reset on the feet. That advantage, that invisible advantage goes to me because I'm the one who shot in, not to the person who is attacking. So they really heavily favor initiations, okay? And that makes the sport more exciting and it makes you want to push the pace more. Very, very interesting stuff. At the end of the match, if there is a referee's decision, they literally just count the initiation advantages to find the victory. This is not something that I knew about, okay? And I think it's important if you're going to go compete under the ADCC rule set that you understand that they are counting advantages, but they're not advantages in the way that IBJJF would be counting them. They're initiation advantages. So I just find overall it was a great experience, even though I came away with a bronze in the adult division. I got a gold in the masters division. I mean, it was a very, I fought two guys. They were older than me. It was pretty relaxed. I never really cared too much about masters. It's just extra matches. But, you know, it was a lot of fun. It was a great tournament, guys. If ADCC comes to your town, please support these tournaments. Okay. Like I said, it is its own sport. It's completely different from IBJJF. And I think we really need to support this type of rule set, especially it's going to get more and more popular. Okay, enough talking about ADCC Vancouver recap. Let's talk about training BJJ safely. Okay, so first I'll just like to talk about a couple of my past injuries that I've had. Okay, some have been my fault, some have been bad luck. So I can remember when I was a blue belt, I was rolling with another big blue belt. This guy's bigger than me, and he mounted me, and I was like, "Oh, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to hit this sweet baseball choke that my instructor taught me or whatever." We're in gis, right? So I actually didn't let him mount me. Sorry, I had the baseball bat choke locked in from a side control. I'm like, oh, I know how to do this. I'm a blue belt. I'm just going to spin out and baseball choke him. So I had my grips. He passed my guard. And then as I started to turn, he mounted me. And I'm like, well, I'm just going to double down on this baseball choke. I start turning so hard. And then the guy just postures right up and my whole shoulder popped back out and just boom, came out. I was like, holy shit. I tapped. I let go, and then my shoulder just immediately popped back into place. Super painful, and my shoulder honestly still sucks. If you look at both of my shoulders, my right shoulder, the muscle is a lot smaller than the left shoulder, and that was an injury where that was the first time I realized, like, okay, injuries can happen if I don't respect my body's boundaries. Like, I can't just do a move the way that I learned and expect it to not hurt me. Excuse me. That's just not how it happens sometimes, okay? Especially when you're going against someone who's so much bigger, right? And I can remember another situation where I remember seeing a technique. It was like a Henzo Gracie armbar from Turtle, okay? The guy, he hooks the arm and he sort of falls off of the turtle and rolls through and puts the guy in a beautiful Jujigatami. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to do this move against this Turtle teammate of mine who's also a blue belt at the time. And I remember doing it and just totally botching the landing and landing right on my shoulder, other shoulder this time. And I felt the shoulder go and just sit into the socket. Like, oh God, it hurt so much. And then again, I had to take a couple months off, but I'm like 20 at this time. And then I'm like, holy shit, that hurt a lot. And again, that was another time when it was me trying to execute a move on someone. And in doing so, I hurt myself really, really bad. Okay. Now these are situations that were my fault, but there's also situations where I've had really bad luck. So I can remember the second time I tore my meniscus, I was actually doing a seminar on leg locks, oddly enough. It was the last round, which it often is when you get injured. And off of this last round, I was rolling with my buddy and he just like shelved my leg in a way and I turned and like my meniscus tore. It was crazy. It was just a random thing. It should have never happened. It was a freak accident. You know, you try to learn from your past mistakes every time you get injured, but this was one of those situations where like I had no control over it. Okay. So sometimes you will just get tweaks or even serious injuries and you won't even, you know, it's not anyone's fault. It's not like you did anything crazy. It's not like I was locked in a heel hook and I spun the wrong way or anything like that. It was just a random situation. So sometimes it's not your fault. There are other times when there's moves that are sold to you as safe moves, and then you try and do them, and you actually find out, like, actually it's pretty easy to hurt myself. Like one example would be the calf slicer. So, you know, you always see guys on Instagram showing like calf slicers, okay? I'm not going to say calf slicers are bullshit. I think they're bullshit from certain positions. So there's situations where, you know, the person's turning away from you in a sprinter's position, okay? If they're in a sprinter's stance, you know, when you're behind them, right? And you're like, your leg is sideways and you're hugging the hips trying to finish the slicer. Just keep in mind that when they're in a sprinter stance, they're in base and they are able to take the leg that you're trying to calf slice. They're able to take that leg and do a full leg extension into you. They're able to kick their leg straight. Meanwhile, your shin is lying across their knee and you're trying to crowd their hips and pull them in. So you're putting weight into the side of your knee because your leg is sideways. And now you got some guy kicking his leg completely straight because you're trying to fucking calf slice him. What do you think he's going to do? He's going to try and straighten his leg. So there's a shearing force here where you're trying to compress their leg and they're trying to kick into you. And what happens is all that pressure goes right into your knee. So slicers from that sprinter's position, they're fucking garbage. Okay. Don't use them. I know you see it on Instagram, you see it on YouTube. Guys, it's bullshit. You never see it work at the highest levels, okay? It's just too hard to apply a move like that. That is a pain-based move on an opponent who is in base. Contrast that with a calf slicer from the truck, okay? So if someone's on their back and their chest is facing up, and now you apply a calf slicer, they can't sprint away. They're not athletic. You can actually cause some damage to someone in a situation like this. So I like calf slicers from the truck because my opponent cannot run away. Calf slicers from the sprinter's position, I think you're better off to just climb the hips and wrestle up and go to the back, start attacking the turtle, okay? Let's talk about some safe practices in the training room, okay? Just in general, safe practices that everyone should have. First of all, I think it's important to ban dangerous moves in the training room, okay? And generally these moves are based around falling body weight, okay? Falling body weight without control. So like, if you remember back to the history of BJJ episode, we talked about Jigoro Kano, the inventor of judo, and how he came from a Japanese jiu-jitsu background. He banned a lot of these Japanese jiu-jitsu moves when he was developing judo because he wanted to increase the realism and he wanted to develop these techniques in live situations. He wanted to systemize these techniques as well. And there was no systems in Japanese jiu-jitsu. It was just like a collection of moves. And the moves were deadly. The moves were like monkey snatches the peach, ripping someone's balls off, gouging someone's eyes out, fish hooks, dangerous moves. There was like arm locks and things like that. But a lot of it's like, oh, I'm going to grab you by the head and like snap your neck, or I'm going to gouge your eyes out, right? You cannot train these moves 100%. And so he banned these. He realized, okay, well, what good are these moves that are lethal moves if I can't get my students to train them? We can say we can do them. We can say, oh, well, I would just gouge your eyes out. And if you ever train with some Japanese jiu-jitsu guys, they actually say this. I've had it happen to me. It's hilarious. You mount them and they're like, well, I could just gouge your eyes out from here, from bottom mount. And I'm like, motherfucker, I could just gouge your eyes out here. I could just murder you and smother choke you and there's nothing you can do. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's kind of fugazi. And then judo came along and Kano's like, okay, well, let's get rid of all this stuff that you can't even train and let's focus on like throws that work. Let's focus on breaking balance and breaking posture and all this stuff, right? So it reminds me of that. Some of the moves that are banned in my room, flying attacks. So it's just not to say that flying attacks aren't effective. It's just to say they're more risky for both athletes. Okay. So things like flying kani basamis, like scissor takedowns, guard jumping in general, I don't allow in the room. I encourage it in competition though, especially in the gi. Guard jumping is extremely effective. Slams. Okay. Huge slams, unnecessary slams out of submissions. Okay. Tani Otoshi. I just actually posted something on Instagram today showing Justin Flores, J-Flow, he posted a video of a guy doing a Tani Otoshi and completely destroying this guy's knee, okay? Tani Otoshi is the move where you have like a body lock and you drop behind your partner and kind of fall as you trip. Everyone seems to do this move, but everyone forgets that this is uncontrolled falling body weight. And yes, you can do the move safely, but even if you do the move safely, there's a chance that your partner's leg is in the wrong position. And so Tani Otoshi can be quite dangerous. So I ban Tani Otoshi. There's better ways to take someone down from a body lock situation. I think it's really important to, on a regular basis, talk to your team about these moves and make sure they know that they're not to do these moves in training. No guard jumping, no flying attacks, no big slams, no uncontrolled falling body weight, no passing the guard and like falling on your partner, okay? Especially if you have guests from other academies dropping into your school because these techniques may be allowed at their academy. So it's important to understand we need to set boundaries when we have guests and that we just reiterate that, hey, no uncontrolled falling body weight. That's probably the biggest thing that can prevent catastrophic injuries. Remind people to keep it safe, keep it playful, okay? Another thing, don't socialize or linger on the middle of the floor. So, you had a couple of good rolls and then you're sitting there in the middle of the floor and not paying attention to anyone behind you, okay? Be aware of people around you. Don't have your legs extended on the mats. Don't have your arms posted behind you like this, and then someone falls into your arm and breaks your extended arm. I think the best way to deal with all this is to have your feet tucked in and ideally have your back against the wall. If your back is against the wall, no one can fall on you that you can't see. So if you're going to chit chat and kind of kill around by talking or whatever, make sure you're looking around and make sure as the instructor that you're educating your students on this, okay? Tell them, don't be sitting around just chit-chatting and forgetting that there's people around you that could be falling on you right now, okay? Let's talk about some dick moves. Should dick moves be allowed in the training room? Here's what I always ask myself when it comes to like dick moves. Are they effective? First of all, because if they're effective, I kind of think that they should be used. But also, do they create a genuine chance of injury? So something like, like a smother, for example, that are becoming so popular. I'm actually really enjoying the smother right now. One of my students, smaller guy, 145-pound guy, fought Big Dan at the ADCC Open. He jumped in the absolute division. Big Dan jumps into the last second. He got smothered by Big Dan. It's kind of an honor, to be honest. The smother move is very mean and kind of a dick move, but it's fair. If you get mounted, I mean, part of the advantage of being in mount is you can cover your partner's mouth and nose with your body. It is what it is. Is there a genuine chance of injury when you smother someone? Not really. Okay. Does it suck? Yes. Is it kind of like getting waterboarded? Yes. But you're not really going to hurt someone doing that. So I think that's fine. And even doing it in training is fine, okay? You're trying to choke each other. You're trying to put each other away. Something like a neck crank. When you're applying a neck crank, there can be a legitimate chance of injury. So if you are going to play for neck cranks in the training room, remember, your opponent can generally, most of the time, always lift their chin and give you the strangle, okay? A neck crank, if done carelessly, can be very dangerous. But if done carefully, I find is not that dangerous, okay? Because you should know when to tap. You shouldn't be letting your neck go Steven Seagal and just break your neck, okay? Another thing would be like having someone's back and putting them in the prone position. This is a position that is probably the worst position in fighting. And I would say, hipping into someone's back is a dick move. And it is a legit way to control someone. I think if you're trying to hip into someone's back for the sake of hurting them rather than for the sake of control, that is not okay. But it's a fine line, right? It is a very strong way to control someone as you start cranking underneath the neck and getting, top pummeling into rear strangles. But legitimately trying to hip in and break someone's back is a dick move. Okay, I would not recommend that. So these moves that can create genuine injury need to be applied safely, just like a heel hook. Okay. Another great example would be like, a lot of these are like catch wrestling moves, rib compressions. So if you have like a case of katame and you're like ripping on your partner's neck and leaning back, I mean, there is validity to that move. But at the same time, you're probably not going to make a lot of friends when you do this. I would say as long as you're applying these moves in a careful way, and you're not intentionally trying to hurt your partner, like you're keeping your partner's well-being in the back of your mind, it's not an issue. But if you do not care about your partner's well-being and you are cranking their back as hard as you can until they tap, I think that you are, being a little bit ignorant as a training partner. And I would advise against that. So what about distasteful moves? Moves like the muffler, where you cover someone's mouth, okay? Trigger alert, the rape choke, where you're grabbing someone's neck and physically trying to squeeze them. Elbow onto the face, the can opener, okay? I think generally these moves should be allowed in the training room as long as they're acceptable in certain competitions, because there are people who want to compete in certain competitions, and these moves can be done with control. And as long as there's two consensual training partners, I don't see there being an issue. All the moves I just named, the muffler, the rape choke, elbow onto face, can opener, these are all allowed under the ADCC rule set. They closely mimic real live grappling, high level grappling situations. I don't think it's that bad, personally. So if it's allowed in a competition, generally I will allow it, okay? But uncontrolled falling body weight is always the most dangerous. Okay, here's another way we can sort of train BJJ safely. Guys, if you're a gym owner, create a class just for beginners. This is super important. I did this not too long ago, honestly, about less than a year ago. And this allows people to ease into live BJJ situations when they don't know the sport, they don't know what they're getting into. Remember when you first stepped into a gym, you were like, holy fuck, I hope I fit in. I hope I survive. I hope I don't look stupid. I hope I make friends. I hope I don't piss off my instructor. Like all these things are going through your mind. I hope I don't suck at this. I hope I can hang with these people who are killing me. You got to ease in. You always have to have a place to send new leads as a gym owner when they call you. Hey, I'd like to try a class. I used to be like, okay, well, come to any of the classes. They're all advanced, right? And, it's kind of like a sink or swim environment. The truth is, having that beginner's class is great because it really gives you a place to put these new leads. Okay, these new leads go in. There's other beginners in the class of different levels, right? I usually say you have to be a 3-stripe white belt before you can go into the advanced class. And at that point, you're mixing in with other beginners and people are still sort of learning the ropes. Okay, they're not getting thrown right into the fire. They're getting thrown into usually controlled situations where they learn mechanics, they learn how to fall safely, etc. So I think having a beginner's class is a great way to prevent injury. Throwing a brand new person who doesn't understand the cadence of jiu-jitsu and doesn't understand keeping their training partners safe, asking them to go spar with a purple belt, and now they're turning it up on this purple belt, and the purple belt's like, okay, well, you're in the advanced class. I'm going to fuck you up now because you're trying to fuck me up. And that's not really great. It's better if we can sort of work out those kinks before getting them to move on to the advanced class. I truly believe that. So having a beginner's class is great. In the beginner's class, I believe that all students should be taught to respect and anticipate the limitations of the human anatomy. So if you're applying a submission, you never just hip in to someone's arm and break it. You have to sort of anticipate when the tap's going to happen. It takes a sensitivity, but when the arm's fully extended and your wedges are good, by now we kind of need to realize, okay, this person's going to be tapping soon. Okay. And if you do have students popping each other, obviously it's bad for business. It's bad for everyone, but that is your responsibility as the instructor. That's not the student's responsibility. If they were never taught to not do that, you can't really blame them if it happens. What do they know? Okay, treat them like what they are. They're beginners. It's you, the instructor. It's your job to make sure that they take care of each other. And if they start popping each other and now they're getting pissed at each other, they don't want to roll anymore, and the training environment's affected, you only have yourself to blame. You need to set clear parameters that, hey guys, this is all about respect. This is all about keeping each other safe. We all got work in the morning. Well, I don't, because I opened a jiu-jitsu school because I wanted to escape the normal 9 to 5. But for most people, they got a job. We don't need to be popping each other and eating pops. That's not it. Not only should we not be popping our training partners, we shouldn't be fucking taking pops. We should be tapping early, respecting each other's bodies, okay? I also recommend as the instructor to share your past injury experiences, just like I just did, because beginners can learn from these experiences and say, hey, like I can avoid certain injuries by learning from someone else's mistakes. Don't be like Coach Matt here and try and baseball bat choke someone. And as they mount you, you're just like, nope, I'm turning down to the floor as hard as I fucking can. And I'm finishing this baseball back. Oh my God, my shoulder just fucking came out. Like, no. There's limitations to your body. And just because you learn to move doesn't mean that you can't get injured trying to do that move. And beginners, honestly, that's valuable information for them. And I always, regardless of age, I always encourage beginners and high-level students to prioritize longevity from an early age. Even my kids, I always tell them, like, if you get hurt now, you'll be fine next week. But if I get hurt now, I'm fucked for a long time, because my cartilage, my ligaments are more brittle. They're more rigid. They're not as flexible once you hit your 30s. And you really have to think about longevity in this game. Okay, prioritize longevity, especially if it's a sport that you see yourself doing for many, many, many years. Okay, be clear with safety expectations. And again, reiterate those expectations often. Some people will grapple in a way that is dangerous to themselves and to others. Develop a feeling for this, okay? So they have to understand that when they grapple dangerously, people are not going to want to be with them. They're not going to want to train with them. They're not going to fit in, and they're going to put themselves at risk and other people at risk. They have to develop this sensitivity for this and understand, hey, I should focus on technique. I should go lighter. Generally, I recommend lighter training if possible, okay? And definitely not hard training all the time. Maybe sometimes you go 100% with certain people, that's great. But for most of the time, it should be about skill acquisition. It should be about lighter training. People are a danger to themselves quite often, okay? It's really important to teach when to let go of a submission. Like I talked about earlier, if someone spazzes out, like let's say you have an ankle lock and someone's completely just starts spinning and spazzing out, it's important to like let that person go. Like I've had that happen many times where I put someone in a submission and they just think the idea is just to roll out as hard as they can, or even sometimes roll the wrong way. It's important to teach people, hey, your training partners might be so ignorant that they do something like that. So if that does happen and you know that they're spinning the wrong way, let it go. It's not up to you to hold the submission and, oh, they hurt themselves, it's their fault. No, it's also your fault because you have to let it go. You have to let them, and then after, definitely have that conversation with them and say, hey, you know what? Like I let that go because I felt it felt unsafe. It felt unsafe the way you were defending it. And that defense I would not recommend. And then they'll probably be like, oh, thank you. Hopefully they won't be pricks and be like, no, bro, it wasn't on. Because sometimes people say that as well. But basically looking out for your training partners is a really important thing. And again, it has to be taught, especially at the beginner level. I also recommend if you're higher ranks, communicate to the lower ranks when they see them training unsafely. That's really good. Okay. Build a culture where your higher ranks are not afraid to give that constructive criticism out of risk of making an uncomfortable situation by telling a beginner, hey, or even maybe not a beginner, maybe someone else who is higher level, but is rolling unsafe and saying, hey, you know what? I think you're rolling unsafe. I think we could tone it down a little bit. We get more out of this. What do you say? Right? Like put it like that. And just as the coach, lead by example. Don't be afraid to tap. Train safely. Train technically, right? Don't be that instructor who is afraid to tap. Don't be that instructor who holds on to submissions too long or cranks submissions. Okay. I've known a couple of them in my day, and people don't usually appreciate that too much. All right. So one philosophy I have when I'm training is kill them with kindness, meaning use your technique over your attributes if you can. So generally in the training room, when I'm rolling, I'm always sort of starting light and focusing on technique. I measure the pace that my partner's giving me. If they start coming at me like a house on fire, I usually turn it up too, okay? Depending on who they are. If they start coming at me in an unsafe manner as a house on fire, usually I will try to put them in a position where they can't move, and then I'll hold them there so that they feel how they cannot move. And sometimes I'll even say, the reason I'm holding you here is because you're going too hard and you need to chill the fuck out, okay? I'm going to hold you here for the whole round. I want you to try and get out. If you keep spazzing like this, if I see you spazzing with other people, you're going to end up here again, or you're just going to have to sit out. You cannot spar. Is that what we want to do here? Let's start focusing on technique, okay? Try to dominate the offensive cycle, but to do it in such a way that you are not abusing strength or speed or flexibility or anything. Focus on doing it with technique. Another great thing that this does is when someone comes and trains with you and they see that you can do this, they're like, holy shit, that guy's got some good technique. Like he wasn't even trying and he was controlling me and doing whatever he wanted. That really shows the power of jiu-jitsu. And if you're a business owner, that sells jiu-jitsu to people. Really, really important. So it's like you're trying to win without even trying, if that makes sense. Keep a calm demeanor, keep calm facial expressions. Show the people that you're training with, like, hey, I just want to learn and just get better. And then there are other times when we might turn it up. Maybe I'm going with one of my buddies who's a high rank guy. Maybe we're both getting ready for competitions and we need to feel that pace, that's something else, okay? But for the most part, kill them with kindness, especially the lower ranks. And then that way they feel more comfortable rolling with someone at higher rank. They get something out of it. You get something out of it. Match the pace and encourage the lower ranks to focus on skills instead of just winning, okay? All right, you got to ask yourself, when is using attributes necessary and positive? When is it a good thing? Between high-level training partners, between competitors, and especially when both athletes consent. All right, we kind of already went over this. Another thing, training BJJ safely, you're the gym owner, create an environment of camaraderie between teammates. The best training environments are when people really like and respect each other and they care about each other, okay? It's like that old cliche. It's like you're literally trying to strangle each other unconscious. You're trying to break each other's limbs. And then you like poke someone in the eye. You're like, oh my God, are you okay? And you're like, it feels so fucking bad because you accidentally poke someone or accidentally scratch someone, right? But here we are practicing to like incapacitate each other. If you can make it so that the training partners in the room care about each other and they really don't want to hurt each other, that's great. That's kind of what we want. When you got someone in the gym who's got a chip on their shoulder, they got an axe to grind, and they want to just prove how tough they are, that's not good. And when you got people in the gym who don't care about other people in the gym as training partners and as friends, that's also not good because now they're just going to go as hard as they want. And if they hurt someone, they're like, what do I fucking care? I don't really care about any of these people. So building a room where everyone is kind of like I said, comrades, and look at each other as equals, even if there's different ranks. Look at each other as everyone is important, everyone is valid, everyone's growth is important, everyone's health and bodies are important. That is where I think people will train a lot more safely, okay? Like I said, a room where people don't care about each other, they care more about winning than they do skill acquisition or keeping each other safe, that's a dangerous room. And another example of, a situation where people are comrades would be like, okay, we're wrestling. I have a big double leg and I put you down nicely, okay? Rather than picking you up and slamming you down to the earth as hard as I can, which you could do, and that is a part of competition, that is a part of takedowns. But if you do that, are you really taking care of your partner, okay? You pick someone up off the ground, their feet are off the ground, they're weightless because, you did such a nice lift. Just put them down nicely, okay? Be good training partners. Respect each other's bodies. Okay, let's talk about mechanics. I think it's important that the instructor teaches good control mechanics. Teaching good control mechanics, I believe, decreases chances of injuries. Okay, I always praise my students when they have good control rather than good finishing. Usually, especially in the beginners class. Okay, so controlling positions for long periods of time generally increases the chances of finding a submission in the end anyways. So if you put an emphasis on controlling mechanics, now there's less of a chance of someone cranking a submission and they can see, oh, I'm dominating this position. Like my control is so good, I don't need to rush to the submission because I have the confidence that I can keep this position for such a long time that I can kind of get the submission whenever I want. This is kind of, I would say, the goal, okay? Teach the idea, of mechanics of wedges, lever, fulcrums. Another great way to teach mechanics, I find, like control mechanics, is to give specific goals or to use the constraint-led approach, right? The ecological approach. Like, let's say we're doing a fundamentals class and we're doing arm bars. And it's like, okay, you're going to start in a fully locked arm bar. Your arm is even extended. Okay, this is just one idea. Your arm is extended. Look around in the room. Everyone in this room needs to be able to trust their training partners that they're not going to get popped. No one's getting popped today. Okay, the goal is not to finish the arm bar. The goal is to hold the extended arm as long as you can while your training partner tries to find a way out. Okay, now we have to do this by trusting each other. If you don't trust each other, we can't really train together because this has to be a consensual back and forth game of trust when we're trying to rip each other's arms off. So in order for us to get good at holding Jujigatame position, I want you to just focus on holding the arm and not letting your partner clear the elbow, not letting your partner hitchhike out. Hold the fully extended arm, see if you can get out. I've done this in the fundamentals class without having issues, okay? This is really, really good stuff. I think that giving these specific goals are really good. Or start with hands locked, maybe at first, and say, okay, your job is to keep the elbow controlled, but your job is not to finish the armbar. I don't want you finishing the armbar. I just want you to maintain the elbow line. Go. And target spar from there. So that way there should be no pops. There should be no arms getting extended and going all the way through the finish, okay? And then once they develop that idea of how they're going to use wedges to manipulate lever and fulcrum, that's when you can put them into more complete games or whole games, as Greg Souders would say, where it's like, okay, now submit your partner. Now we can trust that your partner is going to submit you safely without fully cranking into the armbar. So I also think it's important to sort of separate the stages of control and finishing mechanics, okay? There's two different concepts, right? Control, holding the position for long amounts of time, and finishing, the ability to actually be able to finish your partner, okay? So splitting submissions into stages is really valuable. It clarifies the goals of the submission. So for an armbar, for example, enter the armbar, separate the hands, break-in mechanics, right? So there's multiple stages. Enter the armbar. You could even say control the armbar position as another stage, separate the hands, and finishing mechanics. So if your partner's arms are clasped, we shouldn't be leaning back and trying to crank the armbar like we're finishing it. We got to find a way to unclasp the hands, then you can fall back. So when the student understands, hey, I know what stage I'm in, it makes it more easy for them to understand where they are going, okay? And also the defender as well. The defender understands that there's stages to this and that they don't need to worry about their arm getting broken when their hands are locked, at least not momentarily. It just creates more understanding and less panic when we teach submissions in stages. Okay, another thing would be like leg entanglements. Okay, so like if we're going to teach late stage defenses of leg entanglements, I think it's really important to teach defensive leg lock concepts. So some concepts that I like to teach when I'm talking about leg lock defense would be prevent the heel exposure immediately, right? You can't just have your heel there. You're going to get submitted. Prevent the heel exposure, get into base, disrupt the wedges, usually by opening the ends of the feet or increasing the space in between your partner's knees to disrupt their ashigarami. Pummel your feet back to the inside position, clear your knee line. These are all really, really important concepts when it comes to defending legs. Okay, it's not like I'm teaching a move, I'm just teaching concepts. Hey, you always want to get your feet back to the inside position. Open your partner's legs, hide your heel, clear your knee line. This is all fundamental leg lock defensive concepts. When you spend long amounts of time in these late stage defenses and you spar in these positions, it really, really increases awareness as to when the submission is over, right? Now, expect yourself to get tapped out quite a bit in these situations. This will help dissolve ego in the room, and people shouldn't be afraid to tap. They shouldn't look at tapping in these late stage games, if that's what you want to call them. Don't look at it as losing. Look at it as getting experience, right? And then if you have a culture where people don't care if they tap out because they know that there's a greater purpose for this training, then everyone's all good. We don't want an environment where people are afraid to tap because they feel like they're not performing at their best. It's like, you know what? If you start in a fully locked armbar, yeah, you're likely to get tapped out, right? If you start in a saddle position with double trouble against a good leg locker, it's pretty fair that you're going to get tapped out now and then. And you should get used to that. You know, don't build your whole persona around, I'm the guy who never taps. That's not safe. And it's not good for anyone in the training room. Other people look at that and they're like, well, now I want to be the guy that never gets tapped out. No, that's dangerous. Okay. This one's really important. Teach students that when you're finishing submissions, slow down the speed at which you apply the submissions. So if you have a joint lock I'll use the joint lock as an example because joint locks can be pretty catastrophic for injuries, whereas strangles, there can be bad injuries for strangles, but for the most part, it's pretty safe, okay? But for a joint lock, if someone has your arm completely isolated and they hip in as hard as they can, or if they have a heel hook and they hip in as hard as they can and the acceleration of the finish is very fast, that's very, very dangerous, okay? So we should really think about teaching students to decelerate the speed at which they're finishing submissions. All right. It's teaching intelligent defenses, like I talked about earlier with the leg entanglements, opening up wedges, clearing your knee line, pummeling feet to the inside. This is so much more effective than teaching students to just like rip their leg out or to spin out. If they do that, there's a chance they could be spinning into a situation where they're breaking their own knee, right? So we want to make sure that we give intelligent defenses. Okay, let's talk about like overly aggressive students. Generally, these are people who cause injuries to others or themselves, people who abuse their attributes like their strength and their speed and their size, people who are unable to adjust their pace when they're rolling with training partners. So like if I have someone who doesn't understand that when they roll with a younger or smaller training partner and they just roll as hard as they can, they're kind of daft, right? They're kind of like, how come you don't realize that you need to roll less hard against someone who's clearly way smaller than you? All right. This is a problem. And it's up to you to address the situation when you see it. Make sure if you do see something, or if you do see something as an instructor, you say something. Or if you're a higher ranked student, you say something right to the person, or you say something to your instructor so they can relay this information. I remember one of my students, and there was this guy, an MMA fighter from out of town, who came and visited us for a couple of weeks, and they were sparring on the wall, doing wall wrestling. I'm like, hey, you guys want to go wrestle on the wall? One of them was an MMA fighter. The other one had an MMA background. I'm like, okay, go ahead and wrestle on the wall. That's fine. And all of a sudden, one of them started like almost bobbing and weaving as if he was striking. And then so the other one did the same thing. And now the other one put his hands up. So the other one, now one of them started throwing sort of phantom strikes that didn't mean anything. They were very relaxed and very safe. Okay. And then the other guy took this as escalation and started throwing punches. And I'm watching this whole thing and I'm like, whoa, what the fuck is going on here? And then the guy, the MMA fighter from out of town, he's like, yeah, you want to fucking go? Let's go. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, guys, stop. Like, what are you guys doing? This is a jiu-jitsu school, right? Like, this is not an MMA school. I'm letting you guys wrestle on the wall, do your MMA training, whatever. But like, there's no reason to be hitting each other in this moment. But it escalated so much that if you have two people that are kind of aggressive and maybe one of them doesn't know when to take something as a joke because he's not actually really well acquainted with the other person, they take it as a threat. And before you know it, strikes are getting thrown. Okay. And I can remember in that situation, I split them up. I said, whoa, guys, what the fuck? Stop. I split them up. And then one of them was on the other side of the room, still chirping at the other guy saying, come roll with the boys or some shit. It was so funny. And I looked at him and I'm not going to say his name. And I was like, do you think you're fucking tough? Like, this guy's an MMA fighter, right? I'm a jiu-jitsu fighter. I'm a butt scooter. I'm not a MMA fighter. Do you think you're fucking tough? No one cares how tough you are in here, buddy. It's a jiu-jitsu school. No one gives a fuck. If you want to fucking do that, go get the fuck out of here. Like, in front of the whole class. And everyone's sort of like, holy shit, sitting around and watching, right? And I'm getting pissed because I'm like, I already separated you guys once, and now you're chirping at each other from across the room, thinking you got something to prove. This is a jiu-jitsu class. This is not MMA sparring, right? Like, it's so easy and striking for things to escalate to an unhealthy level. Someone gets punched in the face, they want to return the punch. Then they accidentally punch too hard. Now the other person's returning much harder, okay? In jiu-jitsu, this can happen, but the consequences are not as crazy as like they are in striking. And I remember after the guy came up to me, he's like, man, I'm so sorry. Like, I misread this situation. And I was like, it's okay, man. It's just like, you got to read the room a little bit and understand that, like, what's his name was joking. When he put his hands up, he was like kind of trying to give you like a real look, but kind of joking as well. And like throwing shadow, like it was very, very innocent. Now you're throwing punches at this guy. What the fuck is wrong with you, dude? And luckily they were able to sort of shake hands and actually keep training with each other. And that's cool when you see stuff like that. You see forgiveness and more maturity and people overcoming things like that rather than being pissed at each other. But again, as the instructor, if I didn't say anything, I'm just like, what if I was just like, I'm going to watch this go down. Yeah, I'm going to watch you guys like beat the fucking shit out of each other. I'm not even insured for striking in my school. So if someone gets badly hurt, I could actually be sued for something like that. And so it's important that I step in and say something in that moment, right then and there, before things escalate too crazy. In a grappling context, I think it's important to explain to all your students how increasing the pace can escalate quickly, and that we do need to reel it back during sparring so that it doesn't turn into some crazy Thai kickboxing sparring session, okay, when things just get too crazy. Explain to the lower ranks that going hard on the higher ranks is generally a losing game, okay? And to prioritize the learning and the technique, cleaning up the technique rather than just winning. If any of this shit goes unchecked, it's super toxic for the gym, okay? People look at that and they're like, why isn't the instructor saying anything? Why are nobody saying anything? Why is this becoming a situation where people can just make this a fucking crazy sparring session and no one calms things down? Understand that the gym owner needs to, or the head coach on duty needs to be able to reel things back if things are going in a negative way. When dealing with overly aggressive students, so let's say you own a gym, right? And you have an issue with a student who is overly aggressive. If multiple people are coming up to you and complaining about the same person, that's a red flag. You should take notice of that. You should say something about that. Be upfront with this person. Explain why being aggressive and abusing attributes is dangerous and can hinder their learning. Like it can actually make their technique shittier because they're focusing on using their strength rather than their technique, okay? It's okay to be strong and technical at the same time. That's what you're going to need to go against strong technical opponents. It's not okay to just be strong against small people. That's not really what we're looking to do. That's not going to help the small person. That's not going to help the big person get better at jiu-jitsu. And also explain how being a spaz or overly aggressive can affect people's opinion of you, and it can affect the energy in the room and make people not want to train with you. The student must know that like when they go to other places to train or whatever, that they're representing your academy. So if they go to like your buddy's gym across the city and they roll there like a fucking idiot, that reflects on you and your teaching and your gym. And there's a certain level of respect and etiquette that is required of your students when they go somewhere else. They're representing your gym. They should be representing you well with good jiu-jitsu, good technique, rather than just spazzing out like a fucking idiot, okay? The best compliment as a gym owner is when people come up to you and say your students are really, really good, or really, really good instructors, right? Like these are really good compliments. You don't want people coming up to you and being like, hey, your blue belt dropped in the other week and yeah, he just like tried to ragdoll all my girls. Like you don't want to hear that. Give chances to these people because I believe everyone deserves second chances, but also have limits. Like know when it's okay to be like, you know what? I don't think this is the right gym for you. Either A, it's not giving you the environment you want to train in, which is in this case, like an aggressive douchebag environment, or it's just dangerous for you. Not that's dangerous. Sorry. It's hindering your growth. Okay. Like this training like this does not make you better. Okay. And that's what they need to know. I want your jiu-jitsu to get better. If you train like this, it's dangerous, but also you don't get better. Because in the end, nothing is more important than safety and keeping a good training environment. I had a student who was notorious for kicking people's, like as they were standing in front of his guard, he would kick their shins buckling their knees in. He would, you'd post your hand out on the mat and he would try and like snap arm bars. This guy was really bad with guard retention. And so what he did was when you tried to pass, sometimes he'd boot you in the torso. Okay. It happened a couple of times, happened to me, it happened to some of my training partners. I remember giving this guy multiple warnings. I said, dude, you're kicking extended limbs. That's fucked. Like that's not jiu-jitsu and it's dangerous. It's not technical. And now you're booting my buddy in the stomach. This is kind of your last warning. Like I need you to make some changes, right? And so he kept training like a fucking idiot. And he came in with a full-on staph infection. And long story short, this guy had to take some time off. He was doing some personal things. And then he messaged me one day. He's like, yeah, Matt, I got a check for $1,000. I'm ready to buy the next 6 months or whatever up front. And I was like, yeah, I'm sorry, dude. Your money's not good here. Like I can't have you in my gym because it's dangerous. You come in with a staph infection. It was like this giant purple pussing boil and you trained with it and just didn't even think about it. I told you to change and you haven't done these changes. I'm sorry, dude. You can't train here. Okay. I'm turning down money doing this and I have to have this awkward conversation, but that's my fucking job as the gym owner. I have to do that. Okay. I cannot let someone who is dangerous come in and affect my flock. I'm the shepherd. These people are my sheep and I got to keep them safe. I can't have predators coming in, ruining things for me and my team. Okay. So guy's no longer with us and yeah, it's better that way. No amount of money that anyone can give you is worth putting people in danger. Okay. So also important to understand that some people, specifically competitors, have a game that is based on aggression. And that aggression can be a huge help in a competition situation. For me, the role of the coach is to help competitors find success in competition. Sometimes this means to nurture someone's style, even if it's based on aggression. So I have competitors that are very aggressive, some of them. I wouldn't be a good coach if I told them to not be aggressive in training because that aggression helps them in a competition setting. However, I do need to reel them back and say, hey, there are times when I don't want you to be so aggressive. I want you to focus on your technique so that you do apply a controlled blend of good technique and aggression when it counts. Okay. You don't have to be aggressive every fucking time. As a coach, it's wise, I think, to simulate competition for the competitors. And this usually involves grappling that is based around high aggression. Okay. This is a legitimate style for competitors. It works. And it's hard to teach aggression to people. So when you have a student who wants to compete and they come in with aggression, it's like, okay, I don't want to stifle this because it's hard to teach people aggression. Okay. It's hard to tell someone who's soft and be like, be more aggressive, be more explosive. It's hard to do. Okay. So I'm not saying to take those competitors and totally extinguish their aggressive nature, but try to teach them when to reel it back and when to use it properly. You know, if my competitors want to go hard with me, that's fine. I'm one of the higher level people in the room, right? It's my gym. I should be. But if they're going to go with a white belt, 2 straight lady or grandma or whatever, it's like, okay, that's not the time to do it, right? Read the room, know when to do it and when not to do it. I still think, you know, even if it's an aggressive competitor, it's super important to prioritize the technique. And this is just common sense, honestly. As these athletes age, so they might come in, they might be like 20 years old or even younger, super aggressive competitors, that is going to catch up with them. Guaranteed. Father time catches up to all of us. And it's important to let these people know, hey, you know what? You're not going to be 20 for the rest of your life. You're going to age. Before you know it, you'll be 30 or 40. You think you can keep fighting like this when you're that age? You can't. So it's important to understand that they understand to change their style as they age and to not always rely on attributes, because attributes leave you as you get older, but technique can stay and technique can improve. So that's another reason why prioritizing technique is so important. We all age and we can't always be the strong, nimble, flexible athlete. It's just not possible. It's not sustainable to train like that constantly. All right. Older and recreational athletes, generally, I'm not advising to be overly aggressive in training. And, competitors, you guys, we need to respect these limitations of our older recreational peers. Last thing I'll say is just a quick topic. This is, again, common sense. Take some basic safety precautions. Ice packs, first aid kits, be first aid certified or have someone in the room who's first aid certified. And, of course, good hygienic practices, okay? I also am releasing, or perhaps it's already released, a video on skin infections. Guys, good hygienic practices. This is not really training safely, but running a safe gym, having good equipment on hand, keeping everything safe, making sure that everyone knows, hey, when you go home, you need to shower immediately. You need to change before you get into your car so the car doesn't fester bacteria. Ideally, shower at the gym if you have this option. Don't go home and marinate for an hour and sit on the couch and, sit in your own sweat of your peers. You're going to get staph. You're going to get ringworm. Make sure that you're showering quickly. And that is basically all I got to say about training safely. I hope I hit it all. You know what? If you're a BJJ, if you're a seasoned practitioner, a lot of this, I'm sure, is common sense, but it's good to talk about. And if you're a beginner, hopefully, you can learn from some of my past experiences and some of the bad things that I've done that have gotten me injured, and it can prevent you from getting injured in the future. Guys, I'd like to ask you to like, share, subscribe to the show, leave comments in the comment section. I was looking at some of the comments from the ecological approach. And one thing I realized with the ecological approach is yeah, it's great. I like that approach. I like that mindset, but man, a lot of you guys who are really into the ecological approach, you're a bunch of snobby cunts. It's pretty funny. I'll go to the comment section and people will be like, man, Greg needs to talk to people who actually know about what they're doing. Or, oh man, this is a bunch of people. This is a mess on my episode where I'm analyzing my findings with the ecological approach. I mean, it's just the most beta male cunt men who are leaving these comments. I said in the episode, I'm not a beginner, or I'm not an expert on it. Sorry. So I'm finding my own way with it. I'm giving you guys my findings, and it's so funny, man. Comment sections are so toxic. And you just read the comments and it's just man, Greg is really, lowering himself by having these conversations. It's man, why do you even listen to the show? I find it hilarious. Keep the comments coming. Even the hateful ones. It's funny to me, man. I like trolls. I like it. I think it's all good. It all helps my algorithm anyways. But that's basically the show, guys. You know where to support and to contact the show. The links are at the bottom. Check out my kids' book, especially if you have kids and you want to introduce them to jiu-jitsu. Zara can do jiu-jitsu. You can buy it in the link below. Also, if you do want to subscribe to my online academy, that would really help me with the show. It's $10 a month. What is $10? A beer, 2 coffees a month. Guys, fork over $10. Come on, help me out here. It would really help me with the podcast. And guys, I really appreciate you listening to me ramble on for an hour about training safe and listening to me talk about ADCC. My voice is totally gone right now. I'm going to take off, but you guys have a great week. Have some good, safe training, and I hope you level up. Take care. Oh, I got to say some shit. The Essential Jiu Jitsu podcast is everything you need to know about Jiu Jitsu. Bye, guys.